Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Burden's Global Diversity Awareness Month event presented by Novartis. We are super excited for today and all of the discussions and dialogue around all of these matters that are affecting us in both work and in our homes. We're living in a wonderful time of opportunity. I look at this time as a time of opportunity for growth, for learning, for education, for developing ways that we can become more unified and together. And exploring diversity and exploring inclusiveness and exploring equity are ways that we can do that thing. I'd like to first thank Novartis for sponsoring today's event, and specifically Marion E. Brooks and his team for having a vision for innovative, impactful, and forward-thinking diversity. Novartis has been a partner of Burden since the very inception of the film. They came on at the early stages when we were still in script stage, and they have supported us along the way, and they've been an amazing, amazing partner. So we're just so happy to be able to partner with them on this event today. We have amazing panels with great moderators, and they're going to be robust discussions about around the reason why I created this film in the first place. I was in a hotel in April 2018 on tour for our last film, 90 Days, when the news story about the two gentlemen in Philadelphia in the Starbucks came up. If you recall, these two men were there waiting for a meeting, and the police were called on them, even though they weren't doing anything and they were just waiting on the meeting. If you remember that time, it was also similar to this time, but not as profound. And there were just several events that kept happening over and over again, particularly to Black men and women. And Burden was my answer to that. Burden was my letter to everyone to let them walk a mile in our shoes. And since we created the film, we've been all over the country. We've done global events, Fortune 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 companies, law firms, community organizations. It has gone beyond our wildest dreams, and we are just so happy to be here today for our first live public forum. I want to also thank the producers of our film who have been great shepherds of the project, particularly today's event planner, coordinator, producer, man extraordinaire, Richard E. Pelzer II, my lifelong business partner, who has done an amazing job to put forth today's program. Without further ado, I think we should get into this film and this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Burden.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, baby.
You're living in poverty.
But don't be late.
Promise.
Your schools are no good. You have no jobs.
Take the ticket. If you want to dispute it, I'll see you in court.
Oh, I get it. Wakanda forever.
Looking for some diamond earrings for an anniversary gift?
I hated to even ask. You know how it is. Always harder on
I
us.
know.
Ooh, don't go all South Central on me. I moved your stuff over there.
I could be Superman, but
I appreciate you, but I don't need a mentor.
I could be Superman, but I don't know how. I could be Superman.
Good morning. My burden is your burden. Activism and advocacy through storytelling, cinema, connections, and conversations. Just a few phrases I thought would help to set the stage for our powerful workplace discussion today. Good morning. My name is Marcia Bonner, and I am a senior diversity, equity, and inclusion human resources business professional at MRW Consulting Group International. I have been committed to and passionately practicing in this space for over 25 years. I would like to welcome you to this conversation as I, along with Novartis, our presenting sponsor, and the panelists joining me today, celebrate Global Diversity Awareness Month and unpack the film we just watched, Burden. At this time, I would like to let you know that if time permits, we will do our best to answer a few questions from our chat. However, if we run out of time, each of you joining us today will receive a survey and we will get back to you with responses. At this time, I would like to turn the stage over to each of the panelists to introduce themselves with their full name, title, and a little about their work. I'll start with Marion. Marion?
Thank you, Marcia, and good morning, everyone. I'm Marlon Brooks. I'm the Vice President and U.S. Country Head of D&I, Diversity and Inclusion, here at Novartis Pharmaceuticals. I've been with the organization for 20 years. Yes, I started in elementary school, just joking, but been with the organization for 20 years. And I'm really proud of all the amazing work that we've been doing and the support that the organization has put behind Burden. The movie is one of those things that I'm most proud of.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And next we have Dr. Marquita Williams.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Marquita Williams. I am the Senior Advisor for Public Engagement at Community Behavioral Health in Philadelphia. I am a psychologist by training, former Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services for the city of Philadelphia. What that means is I've been at it for a long time. Also, look, starting as a youngin' like Marion, right? And I have been committed to working in communities, for communities, and with communities for over the last almost 30 years. And so I'm really excited to be here today to talk about these issues and to help us move towards solutions and healing.
And that is one of the primary reasons for us having this discussion today. Thank you, Dr. Williams. And last but not least, we have Mr. Fields Jackson. Fields?
Good morning. My name is Fields Jackson. I tell everyone I've got 2 9-to-5s. My 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'm the CEO of Racing Toward Diversity magazine. It's an online publication. Been around 15 years. We focus on the business case for diversity. My 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., that's my other 9 to 5. I'm the executive director of the HBCU Business Deans Roundtable. There's 111 historically Black colleges and universities in America. 85 of them have business schools. We represent the 85 business schools. That represents about 250,000 students. So our whole goal is to, when companies tell us they can't find talent, we blow that myth completely out of the water. There's a lot of HBCUs, a lot of them that you never heard of. So that's the organization we represent. And I'm thrilled to be here today.
Excellent. And we are happy to have you all here with us today. So listen, we just watched a very, very impactful film. And I'd like to ask the first question to you, Marion. Based on the real life biases and microaggressive behaviors highlighted in Burden, as a nationally recognized and well-respected diversity and inclusion executive, why do you believe this conversation is critically needed during these tumultuous times in the workplace? And what are you doing to drive a more inclusive environment at Novartis? Please fill us in.
Well, thank you, Marsha. I think it's critically important because we have to create a comfortable space to have these uncomfortable conversations. And movies like Burden actually give us that opportunity. One of the things that we've done with Burden, the movie, is that we've had screenings across the organization starting back in 2019 when the movie was actually first produced. And what I found is that when we have these conversations, people are able to see the intersection in their own lives. So we have women saying, oh yes, that office scene reminds me of how I'm overlooked for my accomplishments. We had recently our day of reflection, where we had almost 7,000 Novartis associates for 6 hours virtually. And part of that day was we watched the movie Burden all together, and then we had a very diverse panel. So we had the LGBTQ community represented, Latinx community, the Asian Pacific community, as well as the Jewish community and Black women. And we had a conversation around the micro and macro aggressions that each of us face and how it shows up. And when you have those opportunities to show the intersection and where everyone can see themselves in the process or in the situation, I think we come together more as a collective group and we solve the problems together versus it just being a problem for people of color.
Excellent. And I'm glad to hear that such a conversation took place at Novartis with so many employees. But I do have a follow-on question. One of the things that I've noticed with employee resource groups and affinity groups is that a lot of times we find ourselves, if you don't mind me using that phrase, speaking to ourselves, and others are not invited to the room. How are you addressing that particular issue in your environment?
So it's a great question. So actually, we didn't have our employee resource group actually run this day of reflection. It was all of our business leaders. So myself and the presidents from all of our divisions, we actually ran the day. And so I did a part where I worked with Nathan on the movie screening. I talked about what we're doing in diversity and inclusion, but the rest of the day was introduced and facilitated by the business leaders. And I think that's the critical component. So we have to move from having diversity and inclusion over here and the business over there. D&I is the business. The research, all of it shows, and I see Dr. Marquita shaking her head, all of the research shows that diverse organizations deliver three key things that more homogeneous ones do not. One, they're more innovative. Two, they deliver higher revenues. And three, they're more responsive to customer needs. So I don't care if it's a little league team or a major corporation, you want to deliver on those three things. So you have to find a way to infuse and connect with the business, get their buy-in, their support, but also their advocacy to speak their voices versus it just coming from the ERGs or from the D&I function.
Excellent. And thank you. And Dr. Marquita, I noticed that you were shaking your head as well. DEI is the business. Why were you so responsive to that in such a way?
I was so responsive because oftentimes, as Marion was saying, corporations like to hire a DEI individual, or create an office that's over here, and everybody goes over there when you have an issue, right? And then the business is run over here, and you cannot separate one from the other. Like Marion said, in order for organizations to run and thrive and the people to feel valued, the culture, the entire culture has to be reflective of the commitment to diversity, to inclusion, to making sure that voices are heard, to making sure that people not only understand that their opinions are wanted, but that are valued and that are going to be used to reinforce that organizational culture, those policies, practices, and procedures. So you can't separate one from the other. They have to be in a marriage together. Even if it's a rocky marriage, like some of them are, it has to be a marriage.
Yes.
Come on now, this is
And
a
just to
family
build,
show. We don't have rocky marriages, but please, Marion, jump right in, sir. I need you right now.
yeah, I just wanted to build on what Dr. Marquita said, because that's one of the reasons that in 2019 I was tapped for this role. So I said I've been with this organization for 20 years. I'm also an executive coach and a best-selling author. And I spent the majority of my career on the business side. So I was the head of marketing, head of sales, training and development. And when they said, okay, Marion, we're looking at Novartis to really make D&I part of the DNA of the organization, and we think you're the right person based on your experience to fuse the two. So I think you have to have somebody that has that lens from the business side as well as from the DE&I side to really make sure that there is a smooth marriage versus a rocky one.
I love that, making D&I a part of the DNA. That's really important.
Yes.
I like that. I'm going to borrow that. I like that.
Yes.
It's trademark.
Well, thank
It's
you.
trademark. You can't have it. So listen, I want to bring Mr. Fields into the discussion here. Now I want to share this first. Now, as the publisher of Racing Toward Diversity magazine, you have committed yourself to showcasing and advocating the best current diversity efforts and initiatives being undertaken globally with business and education audiences. You, sir, are recognized as an influencer. Tell us, Mr. Fields, what makes the Burden story so timely for business executives to experience and understand why it is critical that multicultural voices in the workplace be heard and respected by their leaders?
Well, great question. That was a great movie. I love that movie, but none of that was shocking to me. That's, I mean, that was none of that was shocking to me. It's shocking to others to now see how they see how, we've lived our entire lives. I tell folks, diversity is the hardest thing again, everybody wants a soft, nice conversation. Diversity's tough. It's the toughest thing you ever do. And I tell business owners that, guess what? I'd love to be in business with all my buddies. I'd love to be in business with everybody I like. That would be the perfect thing. But again, if I'm selling to everybody I like, then hey, business is good. The second I get out of the room, it changes. So I work with business deans. I work with a bunch of folks. And I see Marion and Dr. Marquita. I'm in the room with 85 business deans. Everybody's smart. It's a tough room. That's a tough room. Trust me. That's a tough room, right? That's a tough room. Everybody's smart. You're not going to back anybody down. So again, how do you get consensus? How do you get people to agree? How do you move forward? So what I tell people is that diversity is tough. It's tough. And again, the thing is, it doesn't have to be hostile. The reason people think differently is because they think differently. That's it. So if I'm the smartest guy in the room, right, and I'm selling to myself, then that's great. And again, just say if everybody, and I pick one school, everybody's from Harvard, you're the smartest people in the world. And I said, that's great. That's great. Good luck selling to the people at Princeton. Good luck walking into Princeton and saying, hey, we got it all figured out. You guys don't know what you're doing. Good luck selling to the South Side of Chicago. So if you're looking to, now, if you don't believe in diversity, hey, it doesn't make you a bad person. If you just want to have all white guys or all women in a room, hey, do it. I mean, that's your prerogative. But the second you get outside of that, You've got to get people that have your best interest in mind to help you navigate that. They're probably not going to be agreeing with you. You probably may not like them. And this is not about getting a date. This is not about marrying. This is about getting the best people in the room to help you navigate a new area. And if that's your skateboard buddy, then go get your skateboard buddy and then you go ahead and do it. But again, if it's not your skateboard buddy, if you're selling products to women, it would be a good idea. I know it's shocking to have some women in the room talking to you about what that market looks like. Now, certain people, guess what? They, diversity is this, diversity is un-American. I said, man, how do you start defining what's, so I didn't mean to get off on you. How do you start defining what's American? Who are you to define what's American? I disagree. That does not make me un-American. I just disagree. So part of what we look to do is if diversity makes sense to you, if diversity doesn't make sense to you, I'd rather not have a conversation with you, to tell you the truth. If diversity, if you're going to argue with me about diversity, about making your business better, Marion said, hey, look at all these things. This will make your business better. And you're going to argue with me with that. Well, I'm going to go to some place where, you know what, it's a sort of, you know what, we're trying to get better feels, help us get better. So by getting better, if you're going into another country, why don't we get somebody from another country, right? I know you're smart. Why don't we get somebody from another country to help you not step on every landmine in that country? Would that make sense? Yes. So part of that is that you have that discussion. And to me, diversity is I take my hat off to the diversity practitioners because it's tough. Every time you go into a new area, every time you bring in a new employee, you got to reboot. You got to reboot. And it would help when you bring those people in to pronounce their name right. Simple things, little things. To pronounce the guy's a scientist, pronounce his name right. That'd be a start. So again, when people say, "Hey, we want to go on that diversity journey," we'd like to help them. We think it's a business case. I think it's like religion. Not gonna cut your head off to make you a convert. That's the conversion rate is low, right? But if you do believe, how do we help you get better? And things like this help people who now have that thought. How do I get better? Where do I go to get better? Right? If I knew it all myself, then I'd talk to my buddies. But so where do I go to get better? You have to go outside to get better. That's where I think organizations like ours and others can now, if you're serious, can help you get better. So I don't know if that answered the question, Marsha, but
actually it did. It did. No, the passion is coming right through me. I had to push my chair back a little bit, but it was wonderful. And let me share something with you. It's that kind of passion that makes the DEI work so meaningful and gives it substance in what it is we're doing. Because if you don't have passion in anything that you're doing, you're going to fall short in connecting with the individuals that you're trying to help. And advance their mindset. And I like using that term, advance their mindset. But there's something going on that we can't ignore. And I want to ask my next question to Dr. Marquita Williams, right? So clearly, and I have experienced it myself, there's a fear that exists in our society among employees, and it is showing up in the workplace through conscious and unconscious biases and microaggressive behaviors. And employees are being called on to be the spokespersons for their race, and they are fearful for speaking up. So their fear is on both sides. So as a psychologist, now I would like to ask you, can you give us some insight into what these fears are, why they exist, and why it is showing up so predominantly in our workplaces today? What is going on?
Well, that's just a little question, of course. Small thing to answer.
I'm glad that one was for you.
Come on now. Give me a break. I'm trying to balance it out here. Work
this
with
is what I
your
think
sister.
about that. Yeah, this is what I think about that. We are living in a critical moment in time, right? And I think it's a compelling moment in time because it is coercing us to confront ourselves and ask ourselves the question, are we who we say we are, right? Are we who we say we are as Americans, as individuals, as families, as communities, and certainly as companies and organizations, right? We have to really look at this mission and these visions and understand, like, are we really living out what it is that we put forth as who we are, as our identity? I think fear is an incredible driver, right? And when you talk about what exists in America and what exists in the workplace, there are significant gaps on every level between whites and non-whites. Like, you know, in our society, you look at graduation rates and home ownership and access to healthcare and access to education and wealth and well-being. Those gaps are pervasive. So when you look at, you know, what the fears are, if I'm a person that is on the top of that scale in terms of the gap, the fear is about not being able to continue that positioning, right? Not being able to continue to have that privilege, not being able to be in that space. And if I'm someone who has been on the bottom side of that gap in all of those areas, my fear is that my position is going to continue. Right? There's not going to be an opportunity for me to be heard, for me to be advanced, for my authentic expression to be valued and received and allowed entree into spaces where I get more access to healthcare, I get more access to education. I'm right here with you in terms of wealth and well-being, right? And so I think that, you know, although fears are real and they're important, the way that we move past the fear is exactly the things that these two gentlemen are talking about. You have to have the continuous, open, ongoing conversation. I'm on an advisory board of a group called Whites Confronting Racism, right? And that is a group of whites who are committed to having the difficult conversation, as both Marion and Phil said, and almost being like the heads, the spear leaders of opening the conversation for other whites. Because a lot of times when you have these conversations, it's the non-whites who are saying, hey, what about me? Hey, I need my voice heard. Hey, I need a position. And I think that as we continue to elevate the fears, have conversation about them, confront ourselves, and continue to understand how these fears contribute to awareness, and then how awareness compels us to confront, and how confronting compels us to our own introspection. It allows us to go into our workplace and then shift policies and then shift practices and shift procedures, because now everybody is on the same page about the elephant in the room, right? So I know I see you looking up at the time.
Marsha, can I
No,
actually. Yeah, okay, go ahead, Phil. I wanted to take a stab too. I just wanted to build on something. But go ahead, Phil.
Go ahead. We've got some room. Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
I mean, that's a great question, great answer. One of the things that recently happened down at Wells Fargo, the CEO came out and said, I can't find Black people. And he said this outside of Atlanta. I don't know if there's more Black people in Charlotte than any place on the planet. I was not shocked by him. That should have been a call to every Black person in Wells Fargo. So again, what do? I can't find Black people. It's like, oh, are you serious? Every Black person should have been at his door the next day with all these people that are unemployed. I got 10 cousins that could work here tomorrow. So part of that is that silence that now all of a sudden, what can you do about that? That's nonsense, sir. That is nonsense.
You know what? I think they were, Phil.
They did. They reacted.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, he came out the next day and apologized, right? So I can't find Black people. There's 15 HBCUs in North Carolina, sir. So if you were, so who are you talking to? Remember about the diversity? Who are you talking to in the room that, number one, allowed you to even have that come out your mouth, right? Right? Because that came out your mouth. So again, if you walked across the street to those 15 HBCUs and said, I got all these jobs, would they tell you they couldn't find anybody? No, they wouldn't tell you they couldn't. You see what I'm saying? So part of that is up to us. Silence is not good. So when you hear those things, I don't mean to take up arms and all that stuff like that, but guess what? I know every Black employee there knows what it looks like to work at Wells Fargo, what the culture's like, and they know 10, 11 people that could work there tomorrow. So there should have been an outcry, not from the press saying, hey, you should have said that. There should have been an outcry from the Wells Fargo employees to say, no, we fixed that. I know what he said, but we fixed that today.
You know what? I think it was an outcry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, there was an outcry. And excuse me, Dr. Williams. Marion, you wanted to jump in here?
Yeah, I did, but I wanted to let Dr. Williams finish her comment. Go ahead.
Then Dr. Williams, please, your thought.
No, I was just saying, I think that you're right. It did compel a conversation. And I think that's what we're talking about here. When we hear these kinds of things, it has to compel a conversation. And that's what I mean by confrontation. I got so many calls from people saying, don't you know anybody in the banking industry? We have to get some people over here at Wells Fargo on one hand. And then the other hand, I heard people saying, I'm pulling my money out of Wells Fargo, right? Yep. So that confrontation, that people rising up in that way, having action to say, no, we're not going to receive this information and be docile about it, but we're going to move on it and we're going to compel the conversation. So now Wells Fargo is internally, having all of these conversations with their managers and their leaders, really asking themselves, are we who we say we are? And if we're somebody different, how do we realign and reshape that so that our people maintain being our greatest asset? So I was unhappy when I heard it, but I was glad about what has happened after.
There you have it.
And for me, I thought it was
Marion.
It's about action. Yeah, it's about the confrontation and then the solution orientation, right? So it's one thing for all of the people of color to say, oh, I have a cousin, I have these people. It's a whole nother thing to ensure that you have in your talent acquisition plan where you're fishing for your talent. Because that's the big gap. And one of the things that we've done is that we actually this year, for the first time in the Novartis' history, hired a D&I scouting and recruiting team to build meaningful relationships in communities of color to be able to, not just when we have a job open, but to build these relationships before we have a job open. So where are you sourcing? And then what is your reputation? Are you an attractive employer for people of color where they don't just join, but they join and grow? So I think that's a critical component of the conversation. So I was happy that he said what a lot of people are feeling, in roles, because I've heard it. Oh, it's so hard. I've led large teams. Oh, it's so hard to find people of color for this role. And I was like, well, I can call 3 of them right now. Where are you looking? So,
right.
Well, dial them up, Marion. Dial them up.
Well, exactly. Listen, the other part I just wanted to say real quick, Marsha.
Please, go ahead.
We're running. I just wanted to say real quick, as far as to build on what Dr. Marquita was saying earlier about listening. We also have to be open to sharing. So one of the fears is from people that are not from our demographic is that they will make a mistake. They don't want to say or do the wrong thing either. So we have to make sure that we're creating a comfortable space on both sides where people don't have to be perfect. They just have to be committed to growth and change, and that we work together. So I think that's a critical. And right now, people are willing to listen, and we have to share. And I can tell you, I've shared more based on conversations around Burden, the movie, than I've ever shared in a work environment before. It's conversations we usually only have in our community. For example, like people look at me as this person with these credentials. And I had to tell them, I was like, when I leave this arena, I'm not Marion from Novartis. I'm not Marion author. I'm not Marion coach. I'm another Black man, and I'm treated as such.
Right.
And I gave examples of the experiences that I have. So I'm not special because my credentials don't show up. My color does. And that's what people didn't understand. And now they started to, oh, Marion, I didn't know you experienced those things. It creates a whole different environment and conversation.
Yes,
And Marquita did something really, really important, that we show up as we are, and then everything else follows, right? Our degrees, our knowledge, our experience, our expertise. But what you see, as we have exhibited here, is what you get. Right. So listen, we are short on time. We should have made this an hour and a half, but it is what it is. We had 1 hour of wonderful. Y'all like that phrase?
We're ready to go. We're ready to go.
Y'all better. Bring it down. All right. Listen, I want to do a couple of things. First, I want to thank you for participating in this powerful 1 hour conversation, and your thoughtful responses, I am sure, are helping those who are listening to us. So again, let me say thank you. I also want to let everyone know that a survey will be sent to you to gain your feedback on the panel and our discussion today. We apologize that we were not able to take any questions, but we, again, are short on time. So I want to thank you, panelists, for joining us. I want to thank the audience for joining us. Listen, if you have any questions about burden, you will be receiving a survey. We want to thank you for joining us. We are pleased to have had the opportunity to share this moment, this experience with you. Nathan, we know your passion is there. We're sorry that we weren't able to hear you, but we will keep moving on, because that is what we do. So listen, I want everyone to feel free to contact us, to be in touch with us about burden. You will receive the survey. Again, we want to thank Novartis. We want to thank Marion. We want to thank Marion Brooks. We want to thank Dr. Marquita Williams. And we also want to thank Mr. Fields Jackson. It was a wonderful conversation, and we trust that you enjoyed it as much as we did. We are here to share our experiences, and we trust that the learning took place. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Your burden